Thank you, Steve, and I am delighted to Thank you, Steve. And I am delighted to be here today with you all and am delighted that Emily is here with me. So, Emily, talk a little bit about the challenges you're seeing. You know, Florida International University serves 58,000 students and is a real hub of Miami. So I imagine you. Thank you, Steve. And I am delighted. Delighted to be here today with you all and am delighted that Emily is here with me. So, Emily, talk a little bit about the challenges you're seeing. You know, Florida International University serves serves 58,000 students and is a real hub of Miami. So I imagine
and welcome. I'm Steve Clemens, editor-at-large of The Hill. Thanks so much for joining us for the third installment of our Small Business Recovery Tour. Today's stop is Miami. I'd like to thank our sponsor, Wells Fargo, for making this timely event series possible. Facing a once-in-a-generation pandemic, small business owners have had to meet challenge after challenge with resilience and innovation. As the economic effects of COVID-19 continue to be felt across the country, what must be done to ensure an inclusive recovery, one that allows all business owners in all communities to really thrive? The majority Hispanic city of Miami is still dealing with the devastating impacts of the pandemic and recently endured the Surfside tragedy. What will it take to assist small business owners in these communities most affected, and what unique assistance do diverse small business owners urgently need? We have a fantastic lineup of speakers to answer these questions and more. But before we get underway, a few housekeeping notes. You can tweet us at The Hill Events using the hashtag The Hill Small Biz, B-I-Z. We're broadcasting live and we'll take your questions throughout the program. And if you experience any trouble with the live stream, please refresh the page, and we're told that will fix everything for you. My first guest of the hour is my friend Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Her district includes Surfside, the area that was tragically affected by the recent condominium collapse and where many small business owners are in need of help. Congresswoman Wasserman Schultz has been working to assist small business owners in her own district and spread awareness of available American Rescue Plan funds even more widely. Congresswoman Wasserman Schultz, it's great to see you again. Thanks so much for joining us today. Look, I think one of the things I'm trying to kind of get into is I sort of felt there was this period of time where it looked like we were coming out of the dark side of COVID and getting to the other side. Now that's a wobbly prospect. I'd like to hear from you and your constituents as you talk to them. What are they feeling? What are small businesses that went through such trauma feeling now?
First of all, Steve, welcome virtually to South Florida.
The Congresswoman is muted, folks.
It's great to be with you. You're right. At the end of the spring, you could feel it, you could taste it. People were reemerging here in South Florida. But then the Delta variant came surging through our state, surging across the country. And really in the past year, small businesses have fought relentlessly to stay afloat. They've had unprecedented challenges. And just like most of the country, small businesses here are the glue that holds our communities together. And really, it was through no fault of their own. The small business community across Florida was devastated during the pandemic, and they are still being dramatically impacted. We had nearly 75% of small businesses in Florida either voluntarily shut down or were forced to shut down, understandably so, during the pandemic. And South Florida, and Miami in particular, which has a heavy reliance on tourism, was devastated by those shutdowns and stay-at-home orders. We had in Florida International University studies that say that when you account for the direct and indirect effects of the pandemic, Miami-Dade County hotels and restaurants suffered more than $3 billion in losses in 2020. And we're still seeing businesses struggle to dig out of that hole. But thanks to the American Rescue Plan, we had a $1.7 trillion bill that included $50 billion in funding for American small businesses. And we've been able to, and I know I held webinars all the way through the pandemic, and I'm still holding them, helping constituents understand how to apply for those important loans and grants. You had $28.6 billion in that plan for the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. That was targeted aid that was absolutely critical. The restaurant industry was desperate for that funding, and it was grant funding, thankfully. And look, the ARP was built on really the idea that the $2.2 trillion CARES Act stimulus bill that established the Paycheck Protection Program and the EIDL program, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. But it was crucial that we get more resources and really infuse it into the economy. The bottom line, though, just to wrap up, is that we have to get a handle on this virus, and we have to make sure more people are vaccinated, and we have to make sure that we still engage in those all important social distancing and mask wearing and public health guidelines.
Financing, getting them the funds to have supported them through this terrible time. Another part of it is, incredible stories of resilience, of innovation. I've seen a lot of shop owners, even restaurants that found, a pathway with digital tools and then kind of partnering up with the support that the government and communities came together. I'd just be interested, if any of these really stand out among your constituents, of these fascinating stories where people were able to turn on a dime and survive, even with, there was support there, but they've changed their business for the better as they look forward, moving forward.
No question. I mean, we've seen businesses, Steve, who, instead of their freestanding storefront, they, loaded their business onto a truck, particularly restaurants. You saw a lot more of that type of circulation. You saw pop-ups. You saw entire businesses shift their operations outdoors. You saw municipalities, in some cases in South Florida, some of our suburban municipalities don't allow a lot of outdoor seating for restaurants, and yet they closed in Miami Beach. They closed, long stretches of Collins Avenue and let people let those businesses put that seating out there. So it was an all hands on deck, everybody pulled together. And frankly, when Surfside happened, that's another opportunity where this community came together, not just folks who lived in Surfside, which only has about 5,600 people, but our whole community pulled together because those businesses in that small town were really devastated, and making sure that we could provide them with the information they needed to get access to those loans and grants. And also, I just urge everyone, stop by the main drag in Surfside and patronize a business in Surfside because they really need your help.
And are you seeing people show up in Surfside to show their support for that community that was impacted? Do you see a blip up?
We are. It's slowly starting to come back, but there's still challenges with the building, and the access to Collins Avenue while they're trying to get fencing around the site, and there's also decontamination issues that are still there. So it's still a bit of a struggle, but they're working very hard. And so as much as we can, continue to try to patronize those businesses and get them access to those resources. And thankfully, President Biden, leapt into action and was able to get a disaster declaration made so that, under a normal circumstance, when you have a disaster like this of a private structure, which we haven't had with a residential structure in modern times, the FEMA is usually not getting involved in declaring a disaster. But thankfully, President Biden and his administration recognized how unique and critical it was to do that here.
One of the other things that's happened, unfortunately, in this country, and it's kind of a function of the toxicity of these times, I guess, is on one hand, American citizens and business owners are getting certain kinds of mask guidance from the White House and the Centers for Disease Control, and they're hearing different things from some governors around the country, including the governor of Florida. How are your constituents navigating this? How do small business owners feel getting orders one way and then being pushed another?
Yeah, unfortunately, our governor has been really one of the main obstacles to stopping the spread of the coronavirus here in Florida. He's put obstacle after obstacle in the way, spread misinformation, prohibiting masks from being required in our schools, threatening, actually beginning to withhold funding from our school districts. Yesterday, he threatened to fine local governments for requiring their employees to get vaccinated, when we know that vaccination is the clearest way to make sure that we can stop the spread of COVID. And we've had among the highest rates of COVID in the country with this resurgence of the Delta variant. And it's incredibly confusing, but also grossly irresponsible. The CDC has had adaptive guidelines because this is a unique and novel virus that has never been seen before. So of course their guidance is going to be needed to be updated. But if you, and I just did an Ask the Doctor segment with my public health experts that I've been talking with publicly throughout the pandemic, they specifically mentioned that even if you're vaccinated, because the Delta variant is so infectious, wearing a mask, it's like wearing suspenders and a belt. It's like, when you are asked to wear your seatbelt on an airplane, but then you can take it off. This is the analogy they used when it's not so turbulent. But when turbulence happens, then you put the seatbelt back on. That's why there's a necessity, even if you're vaccinated, to wear a mask. You're keeping yourself safe, you're keeping others safe. And we have to make sure that businesses, these business owners, they're smart. They are the ones that made their business successful. We have to let them make the decisions that they know are best for their small business and its ability to thrive.
Let me just ask you finally, Congresswoman, one of the big debates in Washington right now, which I think the country is paying attention to, is this difference on the tax and reconciliation package and the infrastructure package, sort of a $3.5 trillion price tag, versus some in the Democratic caucus that are maybe at a $1.5 trillion. I'm just interested in what you think the equities are that need to be preserved in that battle within that's just talking within the Democrats. What do you think is key? What do you think is important? What do you think is overdone?
Well, certainly making the child tax credit permanent so that we can continue to ensure that we cut that child poverty rate in half and make sure that about $350 a month continues to families who absolutely desperately need it. These are the working poor who need those funds to be able to climb out. And those are the folks that we need to make sure these small businesses have the ability to hire. Making sure that community college, the first 2 years of community college, so that we can have more people climb that ladder to the middle class. Those are two critical things that I think are important. Look, it's hard to know where you're going to cut, but we know that the legislative process is about compromise. The bottom line is that we have an opportunity for transformative, historic infusion of resources, both in our hard infrastructure as well as the soft infrastructure, which are our human beings across the country, whose quality of life we have an opportunity to improve now, and we must pull together as a country in a bipartisan way to get this done.
Well, thank you. Well, we will leave it there. Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz, she's Chief Deputy Whip of the Democratic Caucus, and so many other things. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Congressman Carlos Jimenez is the former mayor of Miami-Dade County, serving from 2011 to 2020. Now he serves Miami-Dade's residents on the federal level, representing Florida's 26th district in Congress. I was just telling him what a great district it is. He's got the Everglades, he's got the Florida Keys, and he's got a lot of other cool stuff in between. Congressman, it's really great to be with you today. Look, COVID and so many other issues, hurricanes, natural disasters, but also, this pandemic has been a real disruption. So when you look at the last, 18 to 24 months, I think it can either be a story of disruption, also be a story of resilience. And last time I was down in your area, I sort of felt like you felt business coming back, you felt small business innovating, and I felt a lot of strength. I don't know, it feels more wobbly today, but can you give us a snapshot of what your constituents are feeling?
Look, I think that probably South Florida and Florida in general probably rebounded faster than most of the nation. When I was mayor of Miami-Dade County, we did have to shut down for a while. This is in the early stages of the pandemic. But then we put into place things that made it safe for businesses to open, with the idea of never having to close them back down again, knowing that the virus is going to go through its cycles. No matter what we did, it would go through its cycles. But we wanted to make sure that those businesses that were open, and as they started becoming open, that they remained open, but they did so in a safe manner, and that's exactly what we did in Miami-Dade County. And the differences in the policies here, and also the economic policies, statewide economic policies, and also local policies, made it a very attractive place for people to come. And so I see that we are rebounding. We're rebounding very strongly. Our tourism sector is rebounding very nicely. Our construction never ceased. Our real estate market is going through the roof, not only in Miami-Dade County, but Monroe County too, the Keys. It's just, you can't find a place. And as soon as a property comes online, it's a cash business almost. And so we're seeing a very strong rebound here. We've had a little bit of a setback. We had the Delta variant come through now. We're seeing that also starting to ease up quite a bit. and I still can see the economy rebounding. One interesting thing, though, I mean, I'm sure you've seen this around the country, is that a lot of small businesses are having a really tough time finding people to work in those small businesses, and so we need to find a way to get those businesses up and running at 100%. Because all you see here are we're hiring. They just don't have enough people to fill the positions.
Well, I've seen the same thing, with the minimum wage rate in a lot of states. If you go to, West Virginia, you go to, rural Maryland, rates are up there because the employment levels, or the employment staff aren't at least immediately available or evident. What do you think is driving that down there? And, again, one of the things we've been getting to in this series of looking at Minneapolis and Philadelphia and the dimensions of various parts of the community and what they needed to come together. What do you think the reason is that a lot of folks haven't yet come back into work in these jobs that are open?
Look, the number one reason and I've talked to a lot of these owners, is that the unemployment benefits were actually, people are getting more to stay at home than they were to come to work. And that was a sentiment that was echoed over and over and over again, especially from restaurants and bars and small businesses, that they just couldn't get people because it was, for those folks that were getting unemployment benefits, it was more profitable for them to stay at home. And so as these unemployment benefits start to ease and wane and go away, I would expect that more and more of those that are staying at home are going to come back to work. The wages have gone up because there is competition, fierce competition for the workers that are out there that are coming back to work. And so I would expect that to continue. Look, today my wife and I went to one of our favorite bagel places for breakfast, and it was closed on Monday. They'd never been closed before, and the reason was lack of workers. And that's a problem, throughout Miami-Dade and Broward and Monroe County.
There's one way to look at this, Congressman, where we look at the businesses that we know and that we use and see and figure out whether they were resilient and able to innovate. And there's the other side of it, which I've been down to Miami so many times. It's the next businesses, the people taking risks and the kind of innovation environment, the ecosystem. Is the financing there? Are we mentoring people and incubating the right way? What's the state of all of that when it comes to small business and your constituents as you're looking forward and not just where things are now? Are there things that, when you talk to innovators and small businesses out there, that they need that ought to be on our radar screen?
Well, during my time as mayor, we set the stage to create the ecosystem for innovators, entrepreneurs, and the tech sector to come to Miami-Dade. We invested in something called Emerge America, the huge tech conference that happens here now in Miami. Back in 2012, Miami-Dade put about $1 million into that conference. We invested in accelerators throughout Miami-Dade, knowing that eventually Miami-Dade, because of the infrastructure that we have really good infrastructure here for tech, but also we needed to set the stage for that ecosystem to start to thrive. And that's why the first Microsoft Innovation Center that was in the United States was placed in Miami. Endeavor, all those things started to come to Miami. And I knew that it was going to happen. And I knew that a lot of the economic policies of some of these states like New York and California were going to start to drive away some of their innovators. And they were going to be looking for a place to land. And they're landing either in Texas or they're landing here in Florida. And so we see a lot of people moving from California, moving from New York into Miami-Dade, a lot of people with a lot of money. That's causing a crunch on our housing, especially our upper end, housing here in Miami-Dade. Investors, those funds, those hedge funds guys, they don't need to be anywhere. They can do business anywhere they want, and they're all coming down to Miami because of the ecosystem and also because of the friendly business environment that we have. Miami has been ranked as the top city for startups in the United States for a number of years now. People don't know that. It was a pretty well-kept secret. But Miami had a really good tech ecosystem and entrepreneur tech system. And we also, because of our diversity, we have diversity of thought. more people here in Miami live that were not born here, and I'm talking here as the United States. So we have this real interesting mix of people and cultures and music and tastes that make it, that's where entrepreneurs and risk takers, they want. And also we invested in culture. And so we have a real strong cultural scene here in Miami that we didn't have in the past. And all that is attracting people from around the world.
I've always been interested, in this series, we've kind of looked at some communities that have not enjoyed the sort of fast track that others did. But I've been down to Miami-Dade, and I think you've got one of the best educational institutions in the country in Miami-Dade College. But you also have met so many other educational institutions down there. They're sort of churning and bringing this diversity together. Just real short, I'm fascinated because I sort of feel like you folks are getting it right. Is my impression right about that? And two, what can other parts of the country that have a harder time, with the racial divisions, with the opportunity divisions that you see in other parts of the country that were made very clear by COVID, what are you getting right they could learn from?
Well, look, we had our racial divisions here back in the 70s and the 80s. We had some, pretty deep schisms here, but we worked through that. We do have a great community college. I think the largest community college in the nation is Miami-Dade, College. We have great universities here. University of Miami, FIU is a really well-kept secret. Research facilities that they're now creating. That university is really booming, and it's going to be one of the largest universities, in terms of enrollment in the United States. And so our public education system during the 70s and 80s was frankly not very good. And for a time I served as a city manager of Miami, and knowing that when people came trying to relocate to Miami, what was the things that they were looking for? Good educational system, good transportation. And so at the education, we really put an emphasis on improving our educational system here. When I was mayor of Miami-Dade, I was head of something called One Community, One Goal, where we targeted industries and then integrated our educational system to make sure that we were going to be producing the employees and the candidates for these companies that when they came down, they'd have the type of people that they wanted. That was all integrated in that thing called One Community, One Goal. And that really, helped us turn the table on that too. So education, culture, creating the right ecosystem, educating and graduating the right kinds of people so that the companies, when they wanted to look at Miami, said, yes, we can go there. They have the right ecosystem, they have the right infrastructure, and they have the right people infrastructure for us to move and thrive in our community.
Thank you. Let me squeeze in a quick D.C. question, Congressman. We've been talking a lot about the infrastructure bill, the reconciliation tax bill that will come along with it. We are all debating whether it should be $3.5 trillion, $1.5 trillion, no trillions. It's just sort of, not a debate about as much about what should be in it and what shouldn't be in it. So from your perspective, what's important with what could be one of the largest investments in infrastructure in this country, and what blind spots do you think there are in this debate that you're worried about?
Look, obviously on a $3.5 trillion, that's way too much. We are spending way beyond our means. And so that's going to be very problematic on the budget side. On infrastructure, I think we all support infrastructure. The question is how much and what for? And so we certainly need to improve our roads and our bridges, what's called traditional infrastructure, but we also need to do things which are a little bit not traditional. Like, how do we invest and how in trying to incentivize companies to come back to the United States, especially those companies that are critical in creating the supply chain that we've seen is really been disrupted by this pandemic, and that somehow we are dependent on other nations to supply us with critical infrastructure. Especially on the supply side, supply chain side. So that's the kind of things that I'll be looking at. How do we incentivize those companies to come back? How do we incentivize those companies not only just come back to the United States, but come back into the Americas? And so one of the ways that we can do that is incentivize companies. Hey, maybe you can't come to the United States because of our labor market, maybe too expensive. But you know what? there's a lot of good labor down in South America, Central America, which will improve their quality of lives if you move there, because now you're giving them employment, et cetera, and elevating their quality of life. And then also kind of ease the pressure on the migration that we have coming through our southern border. So that's the kind of stuff, that I'll be looking at. And then on technology, we need to be, the number one in technology. We need to be above, in front of everybody, and way in front of everybody. And frankly, right now we're not. And if we're not number one, certainly China is catching up really quickly, and that really bothers me. It bothers me. Okay,
right.
That's what's happening, and I'm concerned about it. And so those are the things that I want to see us spend on infrastructure, all traditional and some non-traditional, that strengthens our position, our competitive advantage in the world.
Well, thank you for that. I mean, there's so many areas of your work that overlap with my interests on technology, competition, what the next generation big investment for the country are. I should tell our audience that Congressman Jimenez is a member of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, the Homeland Security Committee, and the Science, Space, and Technology Committee. Those are committees about the future. Very grateful for your time today representing the 26th District of Florida, and he's got the Everglades. So, Congressman Jimenez, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's my pleasure, and I hope you have a great rest of the week. And thank you for having me, and it'll be a pleasure for me to come back whenever you want.
Thank you, sir. And now it's time for the sponsor perspective portion of our program. Please welcome Mary Mack, CEO of Consumer and Small Business Banking at Wells Fargo, and Emily Gresham, Assistant Vice President of Research and Economic Development and the co-founder of Startup at Florida International University we were just talking about. Over to you, Mary.
Thank you, Steve. And I am delighted to be here today with you all, and am delighted that Emily is here with me. So, Emily, talk a little bit about the challenges you're seeing. Florida International University serves 58,000 students and is a real hub of Miami. So I imagine you see a lot, but what are the toughest challenges?
Yeah, no, we're seeing a lot. And thank you, Mary, for having me. It's so excited to be here and talk about our program. I think right now, the biggest challenge for our entrepreneurs is doing everything in a new normal. It is a complete paradigm shift for them. And even before that, right, Miami small businesses are really small, they're really diverse, and they're informal. So what does that mean? 82,000 small businesses, 66% of them have less than 4 employees. Our community is super diverse. So we're talking about 80% of our residents are minority, 50% are foreign born. So immigrants play a really important role in our small businesses. In fact, they own 73% of our small businesses. And so if you think about that, they also start a lot of informal businesses. So while we have 82,000 official small businesses, we have 500,000 informal ones. And so being able to reach out to them is really hard. They're sole proprietors, they're head down working, they're skeptical of technical assistance programs because it sounds too good to be true. And I think that's why it's so great to be able to be at FIU. They know FIU, we're an anchor institution, they believe in education. So we're there for them. And that's 50% of the battle. They know who we are. Secondly, we design our programs so that we meet them where they are, not where people think they should be. And so having really accessible technical assistance program, knowing that when we tell them what they should do, we're there to also help them along the way.
And innovation is a big focus for you all, right? So talk about some of that, because I think that's been really key to everything we've all been dealing with for the last 18 months, but especially small businesses.
Everything. Pivot, pivot, pivot. It's a favorite word of the 21st, of 2021, pivot, and digital, right? And so innovation is important from that perspective. For example, we had a small business that came to us in 2019, Nadia, Haitian American woman, owns Sweet Delight cheesecakes. She was cooking out of her mom's kitchen, selling, making about $7,000 a quarter. When she came to us, she couldn't get a bank loan because she maxed out on revenue, right? She couldn't do anymore. So we understood that part. So she had access to a commercial kitchen right away. and technical assistance from our faculty. So she redeveloped her recipes, learned how to make them big batches. Then we hooked her up with like industry mentors, us, the staff, students. And so she developed an e-commerce strategy. In about 6 months, she doubled her revenue and actually was able to get a loan to go into retail, which was super awesome, her own retail space. Then COVID. So everything closed. And what that was like so devastating, I'm not gonna lie. However, because she had her e-commerce strategy already in place, she still doubled her revenue. So she went from 7,000 to 14 to a little over 25, even during COVID. And so we saw how powerful these programs were, which is why we're so grateful for this grant from Wells Fargo. The digital transformation program is going to be life-changing. And learning from the pandemic, learning that people actually like virtual, they want instruction virtually. So we have this high-tech, high-touch approach now. We're on a platform, people can access us any time of the day, even if they miss it. But more importantly, we're also doing classes at 7 p.m., like my poor staff, because that's really when small business owners have time. And so we do that. And then we still have high touch, because just because you tell someone to have a digital strategy doesn't mean they can implement it. So really being able to pair people up with mentors is super important. But that's sort of what I'm seeing on the ground. Wells Fargo has really been at the leading edge of all of this, dealing with all of the challenges the pandemic seen across your communities, right? Not just Miami. So I'd love to just hear from you about what opportunities you see in this new normal.
Well, your story you just told, Emily, is perfect, because we see that from small businesses across the board. And, the Paycheck Protection Program, or PPP, was really important for businesses throughout 2020 and then again in 2021. So we were delighted to lean into PPP in a way that allowed us to help some of the smallest and most fragile and most diverse small businesses that we serve. Over 280,000 small businesses got additional capital, $14 billion put back in, and our best estimate is over 1.7 million jobs were impacted by those PPP investments into those businesses. So that was terrific. But what we also realized, as you point out, is that recovery is a long process for many of these businesses because they had to change and retool. So we turned around and put 100% of the gross fees that we received in the 2020 PPP program, about $420 million, back into the small business recovery. So we supported CDFIs with capital grants that could go back in, as well as what you mentioned, technical assistance. So we know that the small businesses not only need capital, but they also need help and support and know-how as to how to retool or how to take some improvements that they may have been making already to their businesses and really accelerate those, because we as consumers have changed what we want to do, how we want to do it. And so we're delighted, for instance, with the Food Entrepreneur Program at FIU, because it's exactly that. It allows for the innovation and technical assistance of small businesses to really reinvent themselves in a way that they can prosper and we can enjoy what's the lifeblood of the American economy, which is the small business. So thank you. Thanks for being a partner in this. We are delighted to be engaged with you all. And I don't know if there's anything else you would add, but I would just add my thanks.
Oh, and thank you so much. And I think investing in CDFIs and TA programs right now are so important, because if you think about how important the PPP were for certain small businesses, informal economy, sole proprietors, baby companies, they couldn't access PPP. So the other half of what you're doing is, to me, the lifeblood of what's going to get everyone back up and running. So thank you for this program. Well,
and where you started with diverse small businesses, 80% of those open for business, which is our moniker on the reinvestment of those $420 million in fees, 80% of those funds are going to help diverse small businesses. So that's a super important part of what we believe in, and what you all believe too. So we're just delighted to be a part of it.
Yeah, and thank you. And thank you for hosting this forum. I think it's important for everyone to hear.
Great. Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.
Great, and now it's time for our panel of experts. Inez Long is the president and CEO of the Black Business Investment Fund of Florida, which is a community development financial institution, or CDFI, that focuses on providing capital to Black, minority, and underserved small businesses. Alfred Sanchez is the president and CEO of the Greater Miami Chamber of Commerce. He's got a great Twitter feed. I've been reading it today. South Florida's first and longest sustaining business development organization, one of the largest chambers in the southeastern United States. And finally, Carolina Malia. Carolina Malia is the owner and chef at L'Artisan Creative Bakery, the first French vegan bakery in the U.S., which features an award-winning croissant on its menu. A big thank you to all of us. Listen, I've got to start with Carolina, folks. Carolina, I'm just in my little prep here. It says you won the Croissant Battle Miami 2 years ago. Before, how did you win? What did you pull? How did you pull it off?
That's correct. That was the year when we opened, and it was a blind testing. We were called to participate, and being vegan, we said, okay, we don't really have a chance like right now with all these amazing bakeries participating, but the judges, they saw the creativity, the flavors were there, the techniques were there. So we won. It was incredible.
Well, before I
it was
jump
the only vegan croissant.
Well, I can't wait to get back down there. I'm down in Miami-Dade area and that my southern Florida area a lot, and I can't wait to come sample it myself. But before I jump to Alfred and Inez, can you just give our viewers a sense of what your journey has been in the last 18 months?
It's been a roller coaster of emotions and difficulties, but also the importance of community, how our community has helped us to stay afloat, even during the most daring times. In 2020, when COVID hit, we were blooming. Our business was doing really, really great. But with all the changes, with all the new restrictions that were taking place at that time, we didn't know what to do. We were scared. My employees were scared, of course. We tried different ways to try to stay afloat. But at some point, with two of my employees getting sick with COVID, and we had to close. At some point, I remember I was sitting in my couch with my husband. We had to post on our social media that unfortunately that was the last day for us to be in business. And then immediately one customer reached out and said, listen, I think that we can help you. There is an opportunity on the internet. Even if your business, your storefront is closed, you can sell online. So for us, that was like, okay, let's do this. It was magical. We applied for the PPP loan, and we called back our team. We told them, there is this business opportunity. It's a big jump. Let's see if we can make it. So all of my employees back then, they said, you know what, let's do it. We're with you guys. This place we have to push through. And that same night, we were designing boxes. We were designing a new recipe for the croissants so they could be shipped, because that was untold. How do you ship a pastry so delicate? How do you put it in a box and ship it nationwide? So next day, we started to do all the testing, all the trials. We were shipping boxes of croissants to Chicago and asking our friends and family how it tastes, how can we improve it. So in less than a week, we were back in business.
Well, look, I'm thrilled you're here, because it's great to hear a story of resilience and somebody innovating. I also want to remind our viewers, this story isn't every story. There are a lot of companies that went under and have been really struggling. And Inez, one of the things that I think is so clear when you look at the entire country, and honestly, I don't know the situation in Miami, but often communities of color, underserved communities, were hit very, very hard by the pandemic in health and business impacts, opportunity impacts. And I know your job is to try to bridge that so that we get essentially not just justice, but, a greater equality of opportunity in tracking this. What is the Miami story? And when you talk to the folks you're working with, what do they most need? Is it money and finance? Is it mentorship? Is it to get the cards stacked less against them? What do they need?
Well, thank you so much for having me here today. From my experience in the work that we're doing down in the Miami market, what we have experienced over the past 2 years is that the small businesses need all of those things. They need a resource that's going to work with them to help them strategically figure out how to continue to do their business differently in the new world. The other thing that they need is they need resources, they need capital, whether it's grant capital or whether it's if we as an entity can provide them loan capital that's longer term, lower interest rates, so that it feels like grant money coming into their shops that will allow for them to hold on to their business model along with the adjustment in the strategy, the marketing strategies for their businesses. That has been the work that we have been doing with small businesses in the marketplace.
Well, part of the story, Inez, and I want to jump to Alfred, that I know is all over this question, but part of it is not just how do I put it, not holding together what we've already gotten by way of business, but there's also the story of the next business, the next innovators, incubating the next set of opportunities. Do you find in this time when I don't know if we're out of COVID, in the middle, wherever we may be in this horrible pandemic process, but do you find new businesses having the confidence to come online now? What's that story?
I'm sorry, absolutely, yes. We are finding a strong demand in the marketplace for folks wanting to start businesses. So much, in fact, that we have a part of the financial technical assistance services that we provide. We've brought on a whole level of helping startups, folks that are thinking about it, people that want to get into the game. We've worked with a lot of our investors to bring aboard additional resources that will allow us to support teaching folks the ABCs of doing business, bringing it out of that thought process.
Oh, thank you. Well, Alfred, your organization is so big. You have so many, as I'm reading it here, 400,000 employees at firms that are part of your operation. And you tweeted out that Miami-Dade County Mayor Daniela Levine Cava, whom I'm going to talk to in a few minutes, that you really praised her. She said it's the first time in your memory that you remember the mayor coming and saying, how can we take this $9 billion budget, which is huge, and link it with some of the priorities in the business community right now. So what did you hear? What were your priorities that you communicated to the mayor? And do you have confidence? What were some of those things? And do you have confidence that they'll be, grabbed?
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, and great to be with you and all of my colleagues here. Look, I think the Mayor, Daniela Levine Cava, has done a great job. She started early in really looking through all of our different constituents and asking, so what's important to you? What do you need? One of the things that we know that the business community needs is investment. We know that our community is made up primarily of small businesses. We have 87,000 small businesses. Only 1,500 of those are 100 and above employees. So what does that tell you? It tells you we're a community of small businesses. And I think I want to herald something that Inez said, because, all of our businesses, we've been surveying the business community throughout the whole pandemic to see what are their changing needs. And one of the things that we did this last time is we asked them, are you having trouble, getting hiring? And they all were saying yes. And then we were asking the employees or the former employees who are out there, so, why aren't you going back to work? And one of the things that they said is, I'm going to take a shot. I'm going to take a shot at becoming a small business because now I can. I was scared of it before, but now over those last 18 months, I've kind of had to fend for myself and go out there, so I'm going to take my shot. And so technical assistance in doing that is one of the key things. Access to capital is one of the key things. And Inez Group is doing it. The mayor and the county is going to be doing some, I don't want to steal her thunder, but she's got a terrific story that she's going to tell, where all of us in the community, the educational institutions, the economic development institutions are working with her to provide that kind of expertise and technical support.
Do you find, Alfred, that sometimes when I'm talking to sort of communities, that do you see that you need more incubators there? And when you kind of look at the deficits in what you have, because there's one side of it that's kind of looking at, okay, how do we make a good story better? But I'm just sort of interested in what is missing. What are the deficits that need to be addressed from your perspective?
Yeah, I think incubators are something that we've been catching up to. I think, listen, former Mayor Jimenez, Congressman Jimenez now has been working a long time. He mentioned One Community, One Goal. That was something that the Greater Miami Chamber started many, many years ago. And, one of the things we looked at, is, along with the Knight Foundation, 15 years ago, was how do we attract these tech companies here to Miami? They're coming in droves now. So that means we're having, we need to incubate these because I think the Kauffman Foundation a couple of years ago said that we're the #1 in startups, but we're I think 50 in scale up. So that's what we need to do, is scale them up. But now the good news is, because of this new interest that's here in Miami, a lot of the investors are coming and allowing us to incubate and giving us the resources to be able to do that.
Well, thank you. Well, Carolina, I want to come back to you because, I am, if what I have is right, I mean, you have all sorts of obstacles you have to deal with in your bakery. And I hope Alfred and Inez get down to your bakery. I'll tell everybody it's L'Artisan Creative Bakery.
Yes,
but you have
absolutely.
global supply chain problems, right? I mean, I talk about global supply chain problems. You have problems getting ingredients, and then the costs are shifting. There's a lot of dimensions, to your world, which I find such a microcosm, of the issues that you deal with some of the biggest companies in the country. But when it comes to, like, as you think now, I mean, I bet just listening to you, what you've learned about business, you'll probably never go back to what you were like before COVID. You're now going to, you're now an export powerhouse, et cetera. But I just be interested, with you and somebody wanted to copy you and going to take your journey and learn from it, what would be the most important thing that others in the Miami area might learn from, that were really important, that you've learned, that have helped you succeed?
One of the most important things is that you need to invest in technology. You need to invest in the proper equipment that is going to take you there. You have to know very clearly where you want to go and invest in that. You have to invest in not only in the equipment, but also in those tools that, as a manager, you have to invest in yourself. You have to learn how to properly do your taxes, how to keep your books, how you're going to hire people, how you're going to be more attractive to those employees. Because now we're seeing this migration of employees to better paid companies, or to hotels, or to bigger restaurants, or even to other cities that are offering better pay. So we have to become more attractive and be able to keep those employees with us, because at the end of the day, we also need that human resource that is going to take us there. And us as business owners, as entrepreneurs, we need to also get all that knowledge and how to be the best at what we're doing. So if you want to start, if you want to invest in technology, invest in yourself, look at the internet as a better option sometimes as a storefront. It's going to be way cheaper, and you are going to have a broader reach.
Great. Well, thank you. Look, I want to take a question from the audience, but I want to ask Alfred and Inez real quick. Inez, you go first. When I look at this CDFI and I look at essentially policies about small businesses, something Alfred just really said just resonated with me, which is a lot of firms are just mom and pop firms, very, very small firms, not a lot of employees. In fact, a group under the Internet Registrar Company, GoDaddy, has found that these ventures, or very, very small firms, are proliferating. And the more there are, the more economically resilient you are. But I'm interested from a CDFI perspective. whether we have the tools to actually help, and we have the finances to really help those new businesses at that micro level, that eventually we want to become macro firms. But do we need to put more resources in this than we have now, or do you think our infrastructure is pretty good?
Oh, Steve, that is such a great question. In regards to CDFIs, we're like small businesses ourselves. So absolutely, we have to it's just like Caroline said, we have to reinvest in ourselves as well. Our technology, our human capital, to ensure that we're able to bring the business services to the clients. I think that as a CDFI, we have been really blessed this past year with the U.S. Department of Treasury investing tons of monies into those programs, into the CDFI programs. Because as you know, a CDFI, we can hold debt for small businesses on our books. We're not going to get written up for that kind of creative underwriting as if those loans were on the books of a regular commercial bank. So CDFIs play a great role in this whole system resource to allow for us to bring capital in a very, very creative way to those tiny small businesses and to provide them technical assistance and to work in partnership and collaboration with the other resource providers in the ecosystem, all of us together, bringing the resources together, the knowledge together to help grow and scale up our small businesses within the community.
Oh, thank you for that. Alfred, let me get your take on these micro ventures.
Look, there's always a need for more resources, more capital to help these businesses out. But let's not overlook the fact that a lot of the technical assistance. Look, I mentioned 87,000 businesses in Miami-Dade County. 58,000 of those have less than 5 employees. Wow. So what we're talking about here are mom and pop shops. Right. We talk about scale up. They're probably never going to be huge businesses, but they're okay. They're serving an incredibly important need in their community, being the size they are. They still need assistance. And when we talk about assistance, it's not just about how do you X out at 8 to 8x of the value. No, we're talking about things, fundamental things. How do you run your books properly? How do you access capital? How do you apply for loans? How do you, how do you do all of the basic things that many of us take for granted that these new startups or small businesses can't take for granted? And that's one of the things that I think the mayor's going to get to. And I hope, and I have a great hope for that program.
Well, we will get into it, but let me take a quick question from Nicole. Nicole?
Hello, I am Nicole Chaplin. I am with Miami-Dade County Department of Cultural Affairs, African Heritage Cultural Arts Center, and I am the finance manager here at the center. I wanted to know, how does the program address the needs of small startup businesses, especially in the early phases? And subsequent to that, what additional resources are available to ensure that they can sustain a successful operation?
So
thank you.
Thank you for that, Nicole. And as that's similar to what we were just talking about, but give us your thoughts.
So for those startup businesses, we have specialized technical assistance to help those small businesses. We use a Kaufman program where we train them for an ongoing number of weeks to help them formulate their businesses and bring about, the business plans and all of that sort of stuff. We also work in partnership with the small business development centers to help around the same initiatives. We work with our local chambers to help them find procurement resources and all of that sort of stuff. So that is how we start our work with small and startup businesses. And of course, as a lender, we will loan as little as $10,000 to small businesses. But there are other lenders in the community that will do even smaller than that.
Well, thank you. And Alfred, do you want to point to any resources in your chamber that might be useful?
Yeah, I think we have a lot of expertise, you can imagine, with the kind of chamber members that we have. And so we started a program called GMCC Connects, where we're actually having a lot of the firms that are offering consultancy give free office hours to some of our smaller businesses. So you can talk to a lawyer, you can talk to an accountant, you can talk to a marketing and media expert. And I think those are the kind of resources that we can help point to one another and support one another to grow our small businesses. And
I would just say finally to our chef, I'm just on your website right now looking at this beautiful website you have, L'artisan Bakery, the chef, the whole deal here. So I don't know if you have any insights you want to share on startup businesses, but I will tell everyone to go to l'artisanbakery.com and order yourself the nation's only French vegan croissant.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it is very important for us small businesses to know that all these resources are out there. There for us to reach out. They're free of any charge. And most of the time, like for us immigrants, we don't know that something we think is too good to be true. But the reality is that they are accessible, they are there, and they are to be for our help, for our support, to make us successful in this country and to make this community grow.
Well, listen, what a great conversation. I want to thank Inez Long, President and CEO of the Black Business Investment Fund of Florida, Alfred Sanchez, President and CEO of the Greater Miami Chamber of Commerce, and Carolyn Malia, chef and owner of L'Artisan Creative Bakery. I'm going to have to, I should say Carolina Malia, but I'm going to have to learn how to say L'Artisan better. I've got to get my French down. Maybe you can give me some lessons down there. But thank you all so much. It was a wonderful conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My last guest of the afternoon has been fighting for underserved communities in Miami-Dade County for decades. First as a nonprofit leader and now as a mayor of Miami-Dade County. It's my pleasure to welcome Mayor Daniela Levine Cava, who I spoke to just a short while ago.
Mayor, it's so great to be with you. Thank you for joining us today. Listen, you have been both in kind of the NGO world, helping people of just not as much means as many that are on the upper end of things, both individuals and businesses in your career before you became mayor, and helping them to find resources. And I'm really interested in this nexus of when we talk about recovering from COVID and bringing our communities back to life, seeing what's happening with small business. What are the insights you have both as mayor, where you are in such a vibrant place, but also helping those people that may not be on the fast track?
Thank you so much, Steve, and great to be with you. I have spent a lifetime trying to make sure that people have opportunity, trying to make sure that we have equity in our economy. And so I always am looking for the path to help lift people up. And so this pandemic, unfortunately, like other economic downturns, often means that people at the bottom do worse. So it's really our responsibility, our opportunity to change that dynamic and to create the platforms, the technical assistance, the mentoring, the coaching, the access to capital, whatever we can do to the pipelines to good jobs, whatever we can do to make sure that people can, not just the economy bounce back better than ever, but that people can bounce back better.
Now, you did this in an organization called Catalyst Miami. And when you talk about mentoring, and it sounded like high touch, like you had real relationships with people and small businesses. Now that you're in government and you run a $9 billion budget and you have 28,000 employees, does that get lost, the high touch? Are you still able to keep it human and real and connected like you did with Catalyst Miami?
Yeah, thank you. It's a great question. I have created the best team. They are out in the community every single day, connecting with businesses, with nonprofits, with faith groups, with civic and chambers. And I am very accessible. So people do know that about me. They have my cell phone number. They text me. I answer. I participate virtually. Virtual does allow us to spread ourselves a little thinner because we don't have to do the travel time. So it's been actually really fantastic as mayor to be free to really do this work countywide. We had the largest ever engagement program in the history of Miami-Dade County. with Thrive 305, and we had over 1 million responses. 1% of the population completed a survey. We took the input from that and from in-person and virtual meetings of hundreds, actually thousands, and incorporated into our budget, which is being reviewed right now.
Now, I know that you have worked, when you and I have spoken before about American Rescue Plan funds and how that has helped create a bit of a buffer for some out there. What do you need today? And more importantly, what are the small business people? I mean, I think sometimes, people kind of homogenize what small business people mean or are. They're so diverse. They're in every corner of our communities. And they were hit so hard in many ways by COVID and what happened. Now, I mean, we may or may not. I know down in Florida, you are continuing, as much of the country, to continue to struggle with what the new norm is going to be. But I'm interested in, what do you need today? How did the American Rescue Plan work out for them? Are there things that we should be thinking, both in the business sector, in the finance sector, in government, that we should be thinking about that your constituents need?
We have an opportunity to really look to the future, because we have to reset the economy. Things are different in so many ways. Obviously, a lot more virtual technology, a key driver, but also our small business economy, which is the driver, the backbone here. They have to reinvent themselves to the new demands. So we have put up Strive 305, which is our small business innovation program. And we have virtual hubs, we have physical hubs, we have online classes, access to capital. We partnered with the Miami Foundation, our community foundation, for something called labormiami.org that links up. We have Access Helps, another one that helps with access to capital. So we are creating a whole infrastructure, a whole ecosystem of supports. And the CARES Act helped us move these businesses forward. And now with the American Rescue Plan as well, we're going to be doing some innovation grants. We have our own tech advisor on staff and our new economic development director. We're applying for a very, very big grant from the EDA. So anybody listening, watch out, because we are definitely going to win this thing, and it's going to help us. We've always been the most entrepreneurial place on the planet. We get high marks, and what we haven't always been is good at supporting those innovative ideas to scale. So that is going to be the focus of our work.
Look, so many of us have been going to Miami-Dade, your area, for so many years. I mean, it's one of the great attractions in the country. But my impression was, and with all due respect, is that a couple of decades ago, people came in and they left. That it was tourism which continues to be, of course, very important, but that Miami lacked a stickiness for some of the larger players, for investment capital, for finance, which finance is so much a part of the ecosystem that businesses need, to grow and expand. My sense is that has shifted and changed.
Yes.
Am I right about that? And where do you think are going? What do you think that those listening should know about the topography of business and finance, and what's sticking now in your world?
So I think we're no longer just a vacation destination. We love that. We want still tourism to be very big, but we also want people to relocate, at least for part of the year. And, in a way you could say it's the new snowbirds. It's a funny concept, but we've got the tech bros and girls who are flocking here, buying up beautiful homes, real estate, starting their or moving their companies here, or maybe some working remotely. And we are really rolling out the welcome mat to make sure they understand that this is a great place, not just to visit, but to actually work and host your business. We've got the pipeline of the talent. We're working across our very robust college and university and technical training programs. So we're doubling down on all of those things very deliberately to make sure that people stay. And so, we know that we're the fad and the fashion, but we think that the lifestyle is so good, and the global dynamism and culture and weather and attractions are going to keep people here and make it sticky.
You know, one of the other things, Mayor, that has really impressed me about your neighborhood is Miami-Dade College. I got to know Eduardo Padron some time
Yes,
ago. He received the
yes,
Presidential Medal of Freedom from President Obama.
yes,
And when you go down to that school, it just sort of has to have every kind of stripe and flavor of human being you can imagine.
yeah,
You know, you have young students, you have non-traditional elder students, you have students of, you know, every ethnic background. And it was just really heartening to see that. I guess my question is, you know, that's one thing to look at in a university or a college, community college of that sort that trains people on so many different fronts. How is that plugging in? Is that solving? Because one of the things I hear a lot about is the jobs gap, that there are so many jobs that are open and not being filled. To what degree do we need to change our vector or our awareness or aperture when it comes to
yeah.
training people and getting them in those positions? And I know you've got this great asset down there in Miami-Dade.
You're absolutely right. Our Miami-Dade College is, for many of us, our best asset. It's really America's college. It is the great American dream producer. And so many of our leading citizens are graduates of Miami-Dade College. So they're first generation college goers and come from all over the world, like you say. So it's a really impressive economic engine. And that coupled with research institutions, Florida International University, University of Miami, and other really excellent colleges. We have historical Black college, and we have Catholic college, and we have technical. So there has been a mismatch, and we have graduates also from those colleges. We have one of the highest college graduation rates in the country. And so there has to be a more strategic linkage, and we are all working together exactly to make that happen. And I want to mention the Knight Foundation, the John and James L. Knight Foundation, which came out of the newspaper Empire. They are headquartered here, and they have made major investments in the advanced training as well at the community college level to make sure that we have the robust pipeline that we need.
That's great. And finally, Mayor, you know, I know this is a political question, but you know, you're sitting down there in a world, and your constituents, I'm sure, are looking at this sort of boxing match between Governor DeSantis, the governor of Florida, and President Biden here in Washington over what the social contract on masks and health ought to look like. What should those, you know, that balance between, you know, public health concern, liberty, et cetera. And I'm wondering, as a mayor who's at a different level in this, but I'm sure people are looking at you, what kind of guidance do you give them? I say, you know, and you know, is there a betting pool somewhere on who's going to win?
Well, Steve, we're already winning here in Miami-Dade County because we have stayed the course. We took advantage of the vaccines when they finally became available. And before that, we did what we needed to do to stay safe with the sanitizing and the masking and social distancing and the like. And so I'm not involved in that political fray. We just keep our focus on the prize, and we have the highest vaccination rate, the lowest COVID positivity rate, the best hospitalization rates in the state. And in fact, we make the rest of the state look good with our numbers. So we're just going to keep doing what we're doing, and we are leaving no stone unturned, making sure that our people know what they need to do to stay safe.
I'm going to sneak in one last one. My producers are going to get so upset. Tell me about a business person that you know who's sort of had a tough time and come out of this. You know, tell me share a story with us of one of your constituents that you think we ought to know about.
Well, we celebrated labormiami.org launch a week or so ago, and we had a wonderful businesswoman with us who had come through the incubator that I created as a commissioner in South Dade, Accelerate South Dade. She is providing technical assistance to other businesses, and obviously the COVID pandemic was difficult for her business, but she stayed the course. And she is a real success story. She was able to adapt, diversify, and she was there to celebrate with us the launch of this website. And I felt so very proud of her success, so proud to know that we had really helped her along the way to stay on course and not lose hope. And she's, and I'll tell you another one. We have a solar company in South Dade that we helped with a small business loan. I'm talking like maybe $5,000. It wasn't a loan, excuse me, it was a grant. And that company, Cutler Bay Solar, has grown its workforce. It was doubled, it was tripled, it's been quadrupled, and they're installing my solar panels. So,
wow.
Way to go, Cutler Bay Solar.
No, I love to hear these stories. I love to hear that the first woman you're talking about is out there helping other people as well after, she had her experiences. But listen, I always enjoy our conversations. I think it's so important what you're doing down there. I love your experience as well before you were mayor and how you brought those skill sets into what you're doing today. So Mayor Daniela Levine Cava of Miami-Dade County, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Steve.
Well, that brings us to the end of our program today. A big thank you to Wells Fargo for its support and to all of you attendees. I really want to thank Wells Fargo for supporting the whole series. I mean, this round-the-country trip we've taken has been giving us fascinating insights into what's happening with small business recovery in the country. For those of you who missed any of these conversations this afternoon, we'll have the video up from the event on our website shortly. I'm Steve Clemons. Be well.